You're listening to the IWD406 Podcast with your hosts, Julie Wells and Kate McLaughlin.
Ashlie Wise is our guest today, a mother of 2 young active boys, manages an impressive media business, and dedicates her time to organizations like the Montana Women's Foundation, Samaritan House, and Wild Wings Bird Rescue. She is a woman who draws upon strong female influences to conquer challenges, contribute to society, and pursue her passions with purpose and experience. Without further ado, Ashlie Wise.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you, Ashlie. I'm soloing it, so it's a little... I'm like, just bear with me because my partner in crime is not here.
We miss you, Kate.
We do miss you, Kate. Have fun at your conference. Yay! I'm glad you're here, Ashlie. You had to come back, which was bad on our part.
Yeah, what a terrible thing to have to come back and have another enjoyable conversation. You really twisted my arm.
I know. I was like, Ash is coming this afternoon. We'll get to have really fun conversations. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
It is my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Okay, we're going to get into your background. So let's talk about where you're originally from.
It's here, actually.
Here. Yeah.
I was born in Kalispell
Okay.
almost 28 years ago now. Oh, no, 27 years ago almost. Oh, God, I forgot how old I was.
When's your birthday?
97.
Well, but what's
September 30th.
September. Okay, gotcha.
So in a few months. But in a few months, I'll be 27.
Yeah.
And I was born and raised here. I've only ever, for 6 months, lived somewhere else. I just was like,
Where did you live at?
I lived in actually Sydney on the east side of the state. So still in Montana, but not here. And I quickly realized that's not for me.
You realized where home is.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
but I think it's interesting because the last time we talked, you really put some real perspective about Montanans and that pride piece because you're 5th generation?
Yeah.
Okay. So talk to us a little bit about being a 5th generation Montanan and what that means. Because it's powerful.
My kids are 5th generations. I'm a 4th generation.
You're a 4th generation.
I don't want somebody to look that up and then be like, she lied.
No, 4th generation Montanan. What does that mean?
I feel like it means resilience in an odd way. But also about like true compassion. I've never met a real Montanan who didn't have true compassion for their neighbors when their neighbors needed something. Yeah. I think it's super easy, especially right now, to get caught up in the cost of housing and in new people moving into our spaces and just how difficult it can be to accept that comes with new cultures and new ways that people do things. And that's not even necessarily always like of an entirely different culture, but sometimes a subsect of your own culture is different and people come into your space and that sometimes I think impacts people in what they think is a negative manner, but I've never met somebody who's a true Montanan who doesn't want to know who you are first.
Right.
I think that there's sometimes this really big idea around outsiders coming in, but I've never hated somebody just because they weren't from here. I've definitely hated people who were not from here. Like 100%, there are so many of you that I do not like, but and that's cool. But I don't like you because you're a bad person.
Yeah,
I don't like you because you don't put your cart back at the grocery store, and I think you're a piece of shit for that.
Yes.
I don't not like you because you're from California. That doesn't matter to me. I am going to make fun of you, though. There's like a balance. That's the thing about being a real Montanan, I think, is that there's a lot of like playfulness and it seems very abrasive because men from Montana are, again, very resilient. Like they go out and cut wood all winter long. They're like doing heavy. I don't want to do it. They're taking out trash. Right. They're doing things that I am not doing in the winter in the cold. And so they're cranky men. So their jokes are like cranky, abrasive man jokes. But when you get to know them, they're so nice. They care so much about their neighbors. Don't really care where you're from. They only care about if you are giving back to the community that you're taking from. And I think that's what it comes down to is.
I love you just said that. My husband has encountered a few men that are clearly Montanans, that they have a certain... They're burly and they have a certain demeanor.
Yeah.
And I think it's like a no bullshit.
Just to the point. They don't want to mince their words with you. They don't.
Yeah.
They're not interested in that.
But I want to go back because I remember the last time what really stuck with me from our last chat was when you said that, and you have a lot of strong female influences in your family.
I do. I'm so lucky.
It's amazing. If you're looking like further back of generations, like great grandmother. And I remember you talking about the idea that they fucking survived here. Like that resilience factor of, so as you come up and as your great grandmother, no, 3 greats came up underneath great grandma who homesteaded here, was able to survive that awful freaking winter and all the craziness that goes on with planting. And since we're all in the planting season right now, and then great grandma comes into play, she really has no room to complain because great grandma got through it. Now you have to get through it. That sense of resilience. We talked a little bit about that. Touch point on that because I thought that was really fascinating in our last conversation.
I read this quote a long time ago, and I can't remember exactly what it said, but it said something about how we can only see as far as we can see now because we stand on the shoulders of giants who came before us.
Right.
And that's really, I have been really so incredibly lucky to have the female influences in my life that I've had, not just in my family, but like in my extended family and in my mentor circles. I am so incredibly lucky. Yeah. But I have only been able to get this lucky because I learned from the women before me. And I think that's probably what I was touching on before was that there was like really hard times for all of the women who came before me and all of the women who came before us. And so actually I was recently, I'm going to go on a tangent. Is that okay?
Go tangent it up.
Okay. So I was recently reading about the Women's Conference of 1977, which is one of the least talked about experiences in history. And it was like a national conference that the federal government funded and brought all of these women together to talk about what equity rights were, right? And for that 1977 conference to exist and for the planks that they spoke about to be brought forward, I think there were either 16 or 26. But they had to agree that all of those planks were legitimate gender equity issues that would make women, if these issues were tackled, feel as though they were experiencing gender equity in a way that their male counterparts were already experiencing in their day-to-day. And nobody that I talk to on a daily basis knows that conference even happened.
I don't.
And you should look it up. There's actually so much cool information about it. Like so many incredible women and gender equity leaders were there. And like, it's so cool. But I only bring it up to say that there are things that we experience in the gender equity sphere now that we are only able to experience as women because those women stood before us and gave us those opportunities. Mm-hmm. And some of those women traveled like thousands of miles. It was in Texas, I think.
Oh,
yeah, it was in Texas. I'm almost 100% sure.
And what was the year again?
1977.
Okay. I'll have to look that up.
Which is so crazy. I think my mom was like 4 or 5 maybe. Like my mom was a child when that happened.
No
so
way.
When you think about that,
You're that much younger than me because I was born in 77.
I was born in 97. Yeah. That happened the year you were born. Isn't that so crazy? Mom. But that's to say that when we talk about generations and when we talk about the space and time, like that, it's 2024 now. So in 3 years, we're going to experience what 50 years from that conference looks like. And what does gender equity look like in that space since then? Okay. So this is the Status of Women report, which was created by the Montana Budget and Policy Center, which is a nonpartisan research center. And this is the Status on Women report as of May 2024.
It's freaking crazy. It is a crazy report.
Have you had a chance to read it?
Oh, I did a whole speaker spotlight with 3 key leaders here in Montana on it. I mean, just the fact that in general, like where women sit as far as being graded, as far as grades go, in regards to gender, income disparity, it's crazy. It's like $8,000 to $12,000 difference between men and women.
In Montana, women's labor force participation rate is 76% compared to 82% for men. Montana women's labor force participation drops to 74% for mothers, whereas for fathers, the participation rate is 89%. More than 71,000 children younger than the age of 6 live in Montana, and 70% of these children have all parents in the workforce. 1 in 3 Montana women who would like to work are not able to work in the labor force, cite caring for the family as the reason that they stopped looking. Access to quality, affordable childcare is essential for parents to participate in the workforce consistently. Unfortunately, parents seeking childcare in Montana often find 2 problems: lack of availability and lack of affordability. According to this study as well, for every 3 children that need childcare in Montana, only 1 of them is able to receive childcare. For me, it's super cool because you talked about how I have the opportunity to support the Women's Foundation with my time, and I sit on their advisory board as their vice president or vice chair. And we support the Montana Budget and Policy Center through one of our grants. And so we have a really close working relationship with them, and it's really beneficial to be able to carry around those things and learn that and have access to that information so quickly, and to know that it's accurate information. Sometimes when I talk to people about things like this who maybe don't have as open of a perspective, it's so nice to be able to reference the Montana Budget and Policy Center, because when they say, where did you get this information? How do you know that's accurate? If you pull out the back of this and you look at their citation list,
it's crazy.
They literally have 74 citations from different places and different things that they use to pull this information together. It's not something that's thrown together without any thought. It's very credible. It's such a great resource. And I'm so grateful that they exist in our state, because I don't think every state has a budget and policy center to do that. And it is so beneficial to us as citizens to know what the numbers in our state really look like. Like, we should be able to have an accurate view into those things, and I'm so grateful that we have the opportunity to.
And I just want to make an important point here. The report that she's referring to, for those people listening in, it was funded by the Women's Foundation of Montana, but you can actually get a copy of this report, which seems pretty up to date, at www.montanabudget.org. And it's called the Montana Budget and Policy Center. And it's the status of Montana women. They actually did, I'm not sure, but I see some references in the back part of this book that links to what I learned about how we have been scored. They did a rating system, like A, B, C, D, and F. And overall, women, in regards to how real economic type status here for women in Montana, it's pretty discouraging.
So the gender wage gap in Montana is 71 cents on the dollar.
Yes.
The national average is 72 cents on the dollar.
Yes.
So that's insane. Yeah. If you're listening to this, to think that we live in a place where we still don't make as much money as our male counterparts.
Yes, it's crazy. It's crazy.
If we back it up a little bit further, and we say, let's look at a household where all of the responsibilities are split 50-50 between the parents. If we look at a household where both parents are working in the workforce 40 hours a week, on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, mom drops kids off at school and dad picks them up. On Tuesday and Thursday, dad drops them off at school and mom picks them up. They alternate dinners. Like, they are a very high executive functioning family. In that family where that mom works at the exact same company as her husband, doing the exact same job in Montana, as a woman, you are making 71 cents and your husband makes $1.
$1, yes.
Even when you split the responsibilities, the jobs are still the same and you're doing the same amount of work for less. And that's the fundamental problem with this.
Here's the other, I'm going to be a devil's advocate. Okay. So I looked at the data a while back and I was like, okay, this is interesting. It's interesting in the fact that the way that Montana's economic structure set up, it's a very labor intensive state. Outside of tourism, we've got a lot of lumber, a lot of real hands-on type. You don't have that trades background that currently majority of the workforce has here. So, but if I took a step further in looking at why is that? And then I looked at the colleges and how many women enroll in the trades program. There's not a lot. So that can be another factor rolling into why we are struggling here in Montana. Aside from the fact that we do have massive discrepancies with as far as like 71 cents versus $1, right? But
that's $70,000 compared to $100,000 a year. That's like what somebody's going to pay in taxes when they make $100,000 a year. They're going to take that $30,000 makes a big difference.
Yeah, it totally does. However, because I was trying to look at all sides, Ashlie, and I was like, why is that? But if you look at, we have so many opportunities in Montana, but the vast majority of the way things have gone is all labor intensive, and women are opting not to do that.
Can I challenge?
Yeah, challenge
that?
it.
There are less technical programs available in the state of Montana to women.
Okay.
With scholarships than almost any other state. We do not, as a state, vocationally support women. There's almost no programs specified to women. I have the amazing opportunity to read over grants that are applied to for the Women's Foundation, and there are different programs in the works to support women in vocation in Montana, and those grants, when they supply them, are filled with all kinds of numbers and statistics that they pull and they cite. But from things I've read within those grants, it's very clear to me that there are women who want to do those jobs. But again, it comes back to a lack of childcare in our state at this time.
Yes.
If you can't depend on dropping your kid off at 8 a.m. and picking them up at 4:30, you cannot enroll in full-time college classes. You cannot, because unless you have the ability to be sure that your child will be taken care of every single day during those hours, you don't know what the college class schedule is until a couple weeks, maybe a month beforehand. You pre-register, but then you have to go make sure that everything's going to sit in correctly. And on Mondays and Wednesdays and Fridays, you're going to have a different schedule than on Tuesday and Thursday, but you can't take your kid to a drop-in daycare where it costs you, if I take my kids to a drop-in daycare, I think it costs both of them $5 an hour, $10 an hour before they eat or have a snack there or do anything else. And it's more than an hour. Most classes are 3 hours, so that's $30 that I'm paying for that one day for the 3 hours before the gas to get there and the tuition and the cost of books. Like, there are very few programs created to encourage women to be able to go into vocation at the same time as having children.
Yeah, I see that. But how do you offset that?
Thank you for asking me. I have so many ideas.
Yes.
One way that I think that we could offset this problem that we experience is to allow more spaces to have a child-friendly environment. If you work in a space that employs more than 50 employees, there's no reason that you can't budget out $45,000 in your budget to be able to pay someone to run a childcare facility within your corporation, so that the people who are working within your corporation are able to be present and also have an emotional connection with their children, where they don't have to drop them off an hour away and commute different spaces. There are innovative solutions. We have to be willing to implement and have conversations around innovative solutions.
But also what I think about too is there's a lot of small businesses. So 15, if not lower, employees. Then how would you offset that?
Today's episode of the IWD406 Podcast is sponsored by Electric. Hey, this is Kate. Electric is my stage name when I'm a singer-songwriter. Okay, now that we've established this, we can move on. I've created a songwriting challenge for you to write your first song or your next one. To find out more about the Songs Inside You challenge, visit songsinsideyou.com today. We need lots of music in the world. Please write more songs.
Because
I would create a
co-op. That's a good idea.
I would create a co-op within different employers.
Yes.
If I was to do this, I would take and find, and I don't even know if this is possible. I might just be making this up. But if I was going to do it and I could do whatever I wanted, I would go and find another probably 5 or 10 businesses that I knew also had families as a part of their foundational values within their business. And because I would know that they have family as a foundation within their business, I would probably go to them and I would say, hey, I have this idea that we create a position or a space within this place that's close to us. I wouldn't go to businesses far away from me. I would go to businesses within a close geographic location.
Yep.
And I would propose funding together a space for a daycare center.
Smart.
Because if businesses were to also be supporting this space, I think that we would have a more inclusive and connected community. And I think that is really the foundational base for us to all rebuild to a space where we're not looking at each other as Montanans and outsiders anymore. It's just people again. And I remember when it was just people here, and I know that's weird to hear somebody say, but if you're from here, then you know that there was a time when we were all just people. Mm-hmm. And nobody's just people here anymore. And I catch myself looking at people not as just people anymore. Like I'm just as guilty of doing the thing. But the only way to get away from that is to start looking at people as people in our community and families who a husband moved here because there was a really good job offer, because there's really good job offers for people who work in lumber and construction and masonry. Like the work is needed and really good people need to come and do the work. So sometimes there are moms who had a really great business in another place and they uprooted their business to come with their family to this space to support their family. And now there's all of these people who are experts in spaces that we don't know anything about because we don't want to let them in because they're not from here. And I think if I was to create something, I would want to create like a co-op community where I'm sure somebody's teenage daughter would love to watch everybody's kids all summer.
Girl, why aren't you doing that?
I have 7 jobs.
I know, but seriously, but I think with your connections, you could create an organization that would provide that for Montana. You're solving a problem. You've just solved an issue because majority of businesses in Montana could be completely inaccurate with this. It's small business owners. It's small businesses with mom and pop shops.
70% of Montana businesses are small businesses,
exactly.
Statistically speaking.
Thank you for giving me that data because I was like, I don't know. I'm pulling shit out of my ass.
No, that's like an accurate thing. I've read that number in the last year.
Yeah, and you could create an organization that would actually solve a huge freaking problem here in Montana.
Actually, I think it might be 90 because small businesses are actually defined as businesses that have 500 or less employees. And almost every business in Montana has 500 or less employees.
For sure. Just drive on 93. It's all small businesses. I don't know of one corporation locally.
So there are distributors locally. Those distributors still probably do not. Okay, no, that's not true anymore. Summit Beverage exists within the Flathead Valley, and they also exist in Missoula and Helena, I believe. I would say, and they're a beverage distributor. They distribute the Miller Coors products for the Valley, and I think like RC Cola and stuff like that. I used to work there when it was under a different ownership, and I think that they probably qualify. I would say, like Stoltz, the lumber mill, might be pushing it.
Yeah,
they might be pushing 500. But other than that, like the big employee places that you think of in the Valley are like the Mountain or the Park. Like those places are not employing. Maybe the Park has over 500 employees.
Oh, for sure.
But the Mountain doesn't have more than 500 employees. They probably have a couple hundred, but not as one corporation.
Well, and two, if you look at Amazon coming in, it's a large corporation, and from my understanding in Missoula, they're employing quite a few people. So that would probably be one of our major corporations in Montana. But going back to what your concept is, it definitely would help facilitate dialogue, conversations, and also bring back the sense of community, which Montana values community big time here. I feel like more so than from where I'm from. Not just, that's going to sound really horrible, and I'm sure I'm going to get some sort of horrible email about that, but it's really dependent upon the region from where I'm from. Yeah.
I feel where I grew up, I learned that no matter if you actually really like your neighbor or not, when they need help, you help them.
Yeah.
And I think that's what the community of Montana is based in, is that I actually really don't like so many people. I'm really not that nice. And I shouldn't say that like prior to what I'm going to say in about 5 minutes, but I don't love everybody.
Right.
And I don't think everybody has to love everybody. I don't expect that, but I do expect when I'm stranded on the side of the road and my tire is flat, I could change my tire myself. So this isn't really a me example, but I know that there are people who cannot. I know that 22-year-old me definitely couldn't. So I expect that if 22-year-old me, who is a mother of one and pregnant with another, if she was stranded on the side of the road with a flat tire and she didn't know what to do, I expect that every man that knew me that drove by and didn't know me that drove by, and every woman who knew how to change a tire, and every teenager, I expect that they would stop for me. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that's an unfair expectation for your community when you live in a small space. One thing I've learned is that the price for community is accountability. And that is harder and harder to have as your community grows.
Yeah.
But I think that's why it's really important to hold the people who are close to you in community accountable and have ourselves held accountable to the people who are close to us in community. Mm-hmm. Because that's the root of everything is money can buy a lot of things and it can reflect a lot of things, but it can't ever reflect character.
Integrity. I say it all the time. All the time to my kids.
No amount of money will take away if you did something bad. It will never erase it. You still did it. It doesn't matter if nobody ever talks about it. It's still inside your brain. It doesn't matter if nobody saw you drive by the lady stranded on the side of the road. Yeah. You still drove by the lady stranded on the side of the road and you were going home to watch football.
Yeah, and you're a dick.
And you're a dick, right?
Sorry.
And
it's the truth.
And I literally, like, you may have seen me. If you see me, tell me. Like, I stop for everybody on the side of the road. Yeah. I am the smallest person that I know. I have 2 kids with me all the time. I understand that might not be the best risk assessment. I do a little assessment. I'm like, do you look crazy? And I'm like, Ted Bundy looked crazy too. So, or he didn't, the problem.
He didn't look crazy. He was like attractive and like normal looking.
So that's the thing that I always weigh out in my head is I'm actually like, nope, he didn't look crazy. So then I stop and I'm like, hey, do you need something? And people are like, no, I called a tow truck. And I'm like, okay, cool. And then I go on my way. But I know that sometimes there's not service to call a tow truck. And I know sometimes you just need somebody to stop and say, hey, do you need something? And to be able to say, no, I don't have any service here. Like when you get to that gas station, can you please call a tow truck for me? And that's what the community is. And that's where I think everything is based in. You don't have to like everybody who lives around you. You don't have to even care for them. You can have really negative feelings about them, but when they need help, you help them.
Yeah, it's that sense of connecting to doing the right thing.
Just do the right thing.
I was taught growing up that you could always have your car break down in the middle of nowhere. And we live in the depths of farm fields, right? So I could be out there stranded in farm fields forever. People always will pull over, make sure you're doing okay. If you had a flat tire, if you're just walking aimlessly down the road because your car stalled miles back, people are always willing to help. I moved here thinking that was going to be the same way because it seemed like Montanans are pretty friendly. They like to help each other out. But you're right. The influx of what's happening and the no accountability, and it's starting to filter into this world and this community. And it saddens me. And your touching point on that, do you feel that way? Are you seeing it more and more?
I personally do not. I think I see other Montanans feel that way often because I think it's very difficult to go from a place that you spent your whole life and you know everybody in the entire town, like everybody in the whole town, to suddenly, within a few years span, going to the grocery store and not recognizing a lot of the people who work there.
Right.
And not because you don't go to that grocery store anymore, but because there's an influx of people that you don't know.
Right.
I think as much as people don't want to admit to that being a culture shock, I think that's a culture shock.
Yeah.
I think it feels very dystopian sometimes to go from knowing everybody everywhere you went to not recognizing the people around you or the places that you go to.
Yeah.
And so I do feel like a lot of Montanans feel that. I also think that there's like a space in time where we all can experience life together in community with one another without experiencing the need to know where somebody else is from.
That's true. Yeah, agreed. Yeah, absolutely.
I don't think we experience it very often at this current juncture.
Yeah.
But my hope is that we experience it more over the course of time as we all adjust to this different life that we live now. Everybody's life changed during the pandemic to some degree. Lots of people moved, lots of people didn't move, lots of people did lots and lots of things. If you moved somewhere new, then you got to live a whole new life, and you got to go to that space expecting to live a whole new life. I think that sometimes the qualm that Montanans experience is not that they don't respect other people's right to live a whole new life, but that they did not ask or expect to live an entirely new life based on the behaviors and choices of other people entering their community, not based on the behaviors and choices of the people who already were foundational members of the community.
That is so good. That is so good, Ashlie.
I'm running for legislator in
I was
a
gonna
couple
say-
years. That was the big surprise.
Are you really?
Not right now, but that's like kind of my new adventure I want to do.
Do I get to break the news?
Yeah,
I
but
get to break
nobody
the
knows
news.
yet.
That's so exciting.
Not this session, but probably the next session. I have some growing to do and some more understanding of the people who live here and making sure that the people who live here are really actually represented in spaces. And I think that's something worth talking about on this podcast, if I can tangent for a minute. Yeah. During the last legislative session, there was a bill brought forward to actually increase the wages of people who are legislators, and it was shot down because people think legislators shouldn't make any money. But the problem is that the majority of people who are a legislator are able to be independently wealthy, and that's how they're able to take off the time to go to the legislative session, because the per diem for legislative session is $100 a day. That's $700 a week. That's less than what you make on minimum wage at this point. Yeah. It's like a minimum wage job, and they
do so much.
Do
a crazy amount.
But the only way that they can actually be doing so much for the people who live in our community is if the people who live in our community are the people who are represented at the legislature. And that's currently not the case. There's currently nobody who works on affordable housing and has experience in housing working in the legislative session. There's tons of landlords. But there's nobody who's ever been houseless that works in the legislature. And that's wrong, because they make decisions for people who are houseless all the time. And they listen during bill sessions, and there are things that happen to try to take into consideration people's thoughts and feelings, but the constituents should be fairly represented in our legislative space, and they're currently not in all kinds of spheres. Like, actually, you should look up the numbers for how many male legislators to female legislators exist in Montana, like what our numbers look like. Those are numbers that we should be talking about. Those are numbers that we should know. We should be talking about the fact that the people who make decisions for us are primarily white men in this state. And I happen to be in love with a white man, so it's not as though I am a hater, but they shouldn't be the people who make all of the decisions for us.
Right. I get you. I hear you.
And I think that's worth having a conversation around. So if anybody's interested about having that conversation and knowing more about that, please reach out to me or look up the people who are representing your constituency in your legislative area. Like, you should know who's making decisions on behalf of you for our state. It's different at a federal level for a lot of things, but at a state level, there's somebody who lives in your town who you're voting in to make choices to represent you, and you should know how that person feels and what they do and where their alliances and biases are sitting and what that looks like. That's important information. And as we head further into our election year, I would really encourage anybody listening to this podcast to take the time to, even if you're not going to vote, to know who is representing you at the legislature. Know what county you're sitting in and how the people who are making decisions for your county are thinking and talking and conducting themselves in a public sphere. That's information worth knowing, I think.
Absolutely. Yes. I love what you said, though, backing up about the affordable housing piece, is that if there's nobody that's actually walked the walk that understands it, has gone through that piece in their lives, who was it that we interviewed that talked about, it's similar but not really. It's like being on the board of an organization, but you've never taken the time to learn about each position and what they deal with on the daily. So I feel like that's a really important piece, what you just pointed out. So thank you for saying that.
We see this model actually more and more in the nonprofit sphere, to have advisory boards made up of people who have lived experience in all kinds of different spheres, depending on what the nonprofit is. Mm-hmm. The YWCA is a really good example. They're based in Helena. They are a nonprofit that supports women who have experienced addiction, and they help them with housing and childcare and all kinds of things. They're a really amazing nonprofit. Yeah. But they have a board of advisors, and on their board of directors and advisors are people who have lived in the YWCA, so that they have direct opinions from people who've experienced that program. Because the only way that we've found for programs to legitimately get better is to take the feedback of people who have positively experienced those programs and listen to the feedback that they experience positively and negatively, and hold both of those things in our hands and take them just as seriously, no matter which hand you're looking at.
Yeah. I think that's super important. I just went to we'll just side note this, but I went to a Flathead Valley Youth Home Foundation event last week. Blown away.
Beautiful.
Just understanding the breadth of but I was just blown away by their perspective and people that live in the home with these kids. It's like that in firsthand, to be able to come up there and speak first experience, to be like, this is what we need help with. This is what's going on. The reality of it, how it emotionally is taking impact on their lives personally, when they can leave and go home, but then they're there majority of the time living it and seeing it, and just the plight. We need that.
It's traumatic.
It's traumatic. And we need that for people that are running for office, that are determining bills and things like that. It blows my mind. It's okay. And I'm going to go on another tangent. Penny Roning, for example, personal experience with human trafficking, personal experience. It is her mission to knock out all these predators, to get to the heart of the root of all of it. And I think I look at like life, and I'm going to keep this in, but I look at life and I think to myself, we all don't escape this world without some form of suffering. We don't escape the world without seeing the realities, right? And if you've been unfortunately, but fortunately given these, and I'm not saying you, but in general, of giving opportunities to learn and grow, and then you don't do anything with it, it's mind-blowing to me. Do you feel that way? When I feel like they're little blessings in disguise to which I can go and do something differently. I can make some impact. I can make some changes. You yourself is involved with so many amazing organizations. There's got to be something within your heart that you're like, I was born into this world and I have to leave it better than when I came into it. Do you feel that way?
All the time.
All the time. I know you got boys, which I'd love to talk about your little boys. But
they're perfect. I love them.
Yes, yes.
But two things. One, I do feel that way. Somebody recently put it in perspective to me why maybe other people do not always feel that way. And then I'll tell you why I feel the way I do. But they put it in perspective for me that people have to have experiences to relate things to. And I'm reading Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, which really isn't something to read. It's like more something to skim and then use in your brain to apply in your life. Mm-hmm. But when I read through some of these things, I'm like, these are just the most basic things. To behave in a conciliatory way when people who've angered or annoyed us want to make up. Yeah, that makes sense. We should all do that. And I think that. But if you don't have any relative experience having people come to you after you've had a negative experience with them, mm-hmm. if you've only always been the one who creates the negative experience and then has to go to people, it would be really hard for you to relate to what that sentence said. And that would be okay that it would be really hard to relate. It would be an easy sentence to read and be like, yeah, if anybody ever comes to me, I would totally forgive them. But the problem isn't that nobody ever comes to you. It's that you don't ever have any relative experience in that scenario. And so I think that's why some people don't learn those things, because it's really hard to truly learn things and really hold on to wisdom if you don't have any relative experience with that wisdom.
Right.
The other thing is that I was, again, going back to how lucky I was, blessed with a grandmother who loves me more than anything in the entire world. I am so lucky. She loves all her grandchildren that much. It's not like a hate on the other 5 of us. She loves us all. There's actually like 8 of us, maybe. There's so many. She's a great grandmother, though. And she taught me to leave everything better than I found it. Yeah. People, places, experiences, children, gardens, all of it. If you see something, you should help. And I think that for me, that's like a core foundational piece of who I am. I would say that I like very much agree with you in that statement of, I also feel fulfillment in that though, is I think something that is different for me than other people. And I am very willing to recognize once you find your purpose in life, like it drives you and it feeds you and it makes you feel good no matter how much you're doing it or how long you're doing it. And I love to connect with people and make the world a better place.
Let me ask you before you keep moving forward. You think you found your purpose?
Yeah, definitely.
That's amazing because I feel like I was not finding my purpose at 27.
I feel like purpose is an ever evolving thing.
Okay.
And so my purpose at 27 is not necessarily going to be my purpose at 36.
Okay. That's a good point.
But to find what I'm supposed to be doing now so that I can get to where I want to be at 36. Like I live my life in a set of weird paradoxes where I'm always talking to different versions of myself in time. Like there's a version of me who's 17 and there's a version of me who's 36 and they talk to me all the time and I talk to them all the time. And I'm like, hey, what do I have to be and do now so that I can see you when it's time for you to be that person? And at the same time saying, what did I have to do from when I was that person to become this person? And what did we experience and learn together? And what can I tell this version of me so that she's okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there's a lot of things that I've learned in the last 10 years. 17-year-old me, she would be astounded that I'm sitting in this room having these conversations. She wouldn't even believe you.
Yeah.
And it's very important to me in my healing processes of life to give her those graces. Yeah. Because she did the work for me to get here. Like I'm only here today because I stood on the shoulders of her as a giant. I think we forget it sometimes as women too, is that every picture you ever see of yourself is the same body that was in every picture of you as a child. You always live in your bones, and everything that you are today is because of everything you were before. And when we can acknowledge that, when we can acknowledge that about ourselves, then we can really start on that journey of not looking for ourselves, but starting to really find ourselves.
Everything that you're saying, Ashlie, I feel like you must be an old soul.
Thank you.
Do you feel that way?
I feel like I've had a lot of trauma.
Well, that's the other piece too, is I think sometimes...
I'm emotionally mature. I think I've spent a lot of time learning. I've been to a lot of therapy this is not a self-taught thing. I've been to a lot of therapy since I was a small child, and I've been really lucky to have really incredible therapists and really incredible friends. But also, I've really had the time to sit with myself and understand some really important things about emotional maturity. And out of all of those things, I think the most important one is that emotional maturity sometimes means that you will feel waves of emotions about the very same thing.
Right.
And that none of those feelings are invalid just because they come in waves. All of those feelings still hold just as much weight as any of the other feelings, and they're just as real.
Right.
Even though they come in waves. And I feel like I can look at things in a way that helps me understand that I am really deeply impacted by this, but I might be able to look at it more rationally in 10 minutes. And then I can take the 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. And knowing that in waves and in time, your emotions and your ability to logically think through certain things is going to change, I think is a really important lesson to learn in time, but one that, again, is only gifted to us through relative experience.
Yes. Yes. Oh my gosh. Where were you at in my life like 20 years ago, Ashlie? You were in utero. You were in baby.
20 years ago, I was 7.
You were 7 years old, and I
almost
probably I would have gotten more in a conversation with you version of 7-year-old.
Oh my gosh, 7-year-old me was whack.
Well, but
she got in trouble a lot.
But let me just say, but you've probably always thought this way. You just probably didn't. It took time and experience and, like you said, just experience to create some awareness and understanding around it. And I think that's really remarkable and beautiful. So I'm just blown away by you.
I feel really lucky. It's actually... So here's the thing is, tell me something bad about this lid.
Bad?
This is a bad example.
I was going to say, what I mean...
Tell me something bad about this cup.
I don't know. I like the cup. I can't say anything bad about it.
Pick something.
Shit.
Insult it.
Is it plastic?
No.
It looks like it'd be hard to clean.
Look at you stupid hard to clean cup. Now say something nice about my cup.
Oh, it's so pretty. I love the colors on it. My daughter would love that. I just think of my daughter. She would enjoy sipping on that.
So many people would just love to drink out of you, you beautiful little cup. Aren't you just a nice little hydrating thing? Thanks for existing. Did the cup change?
No.
Did it change when I insulted it?
No.
Did it change when I complimented it?
Yeah, no.
So it was the same cup the whole time.
Yes.
I think the lesson, as simple as it sounds, is that once you realize that negative experiences and positive experiences, as far as your interactions with other people, experiences is the wrong word. Positive interactions and negative interactions with people are never going to change the core of who you are.
Yeah.
And I think when you can get to a point that you understand that about yourself, of this is who I am. If you like it or you don't, I'm still Ashlie. I still think I'm so funny, even if you don't. It's totally fine. I know I'm hilarious. And if you think so or you don't, I'm still going to tell jokes. And when you get to that point, I think that's when you get to be a true comedian.
Not only that, but you literally come into your own skin and you're like, pretty much take it or leave it. And Kate and I have had these conversations. I wish Kate was here because it took time for both of us to get to a place where we had a conversation about this a while back, but I feel like it takes time, but you light years, like you time traveled to get there, but you're like in a 27, 28-year-old body. But we both said that coming into our 40s, mid-century, right? We both feel like badasses in the sense of what our bandwidth is, meaning Maybe we just spent all of our years not having parameters in play. And I don't think you necessarily have to have these real strong walls built, but I think it really comes back to the confidence building. And it's taken me a really long time to figure out what that even means for me. And I do think that when you get knocked on your ass a couple times, you get back up and go, okay, not going to do that again.
Learn my lesson that time.
Learn my lesson. And I'm feeling good that I was able to get my ass back up and move forward. So I do think, for some people, it doesn't come like that. It takes time. It takes experience. And when some of us that have had such severe trauma, we go into a disassociative fashion. And maybe that's me. I don't know. But I do feel like it does, if you ignore it, you're going to continually live in that fog and continually feel lost and continually feel not confident and not have those safe parameters around us. But more so now, I feel like as a mom, and I'm sure you can relate to this, I don't want that for my kids. Mm-hmm. So it was almost like a fall on your ass, get back up, figure your shit out, because guess what? Other people are watching you.
And you can't fuck up in front of them.
You can't fuck up.
They remember.
They remember
everything.
But yeah, I feel like as a mom, and I feel like I got to give a fuck. I've got to figure this out. And not just for myself, but I mean, it is for myself.
Like for you, but because of the life you want to give your kids too. Like they deserve, all kids deserve everything. They're all angels, even the assholes. Yes. They're all so good. They deserve all the things. And that's what we think of as moms is we're like, God, I want to give you everything. Yes. I want every Ninjago figure inside my house to be stepped on. Like, I hate that, but you love that. And when your little face makes that little smile, I want to die. I'm so happy. And we all want to be able to give that to our kids, I think. Like we all want to work so hard to give them whatever makes them happy. Yes.
We've had some really insane this conversation was so good. Like crazy good, Ashlie.
It's so fun to talk to you. How could it not be? You're so easy to chat with.
No, I'm not easy to chat.
You are actually.
Thank you. I try. I'm always learning something, and I'm always like, wow, that really blew me away. Or then afterwards, you do this where you're like, you have a conversation, and then you're like, an hour later, like, what the fuck was I? That was just mind blowing, and I'm even more mind blown by it. And then I start like thinking deeper. Oh, I should have asked this. Do you ever do that?
Yeah, my therapist calls it rumination. She says it's not. She says my therapist. I have autism.
I want to.
My therapist and I and somebody else close to me. We were all recently talking in separate conversations, but the same thing came up. That sometimes I think people think that people with autism think they're like an alien or they experience like a whole different set of things. But I just experience things sometimes on a way higher level than other people experience things. Yeah. Like sometimes other people will have an hour later that they're like, oh, that conversation was so cool. It blew my mind. I do that, but like for the whole hour.
You do that
the whole like I'll leave this and then for the whole next like hour and a half I'll just actually completely re-experience this conversation inside my head like a psychopath, and I'll run through it all and I'll be like, oh, maybe I should have said this then, or I should have done this. So I'll have the same thoughts, but I actually like it's very in-depth and like actually it's psychotic.
Well, hold on, question then. If that's the case, then do I have autism? Because I'm thinking to myself, I do that. Well, is that a sign?
Okay.
Walk us through, because you didn't know you had autism before.
No, I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was like 5 or 6, probably, like really young. And I took medication for it for a really long time in my childhood.
Yeah.
And I just was always like, this works for some things, but not other things. And sometimes I still feel weird in social situations. And I don't know what to say unless I watch other people. And one day I was talking to somebody about that. I was like, somebody invited me to something. And I was like, I don't know if I'm going to go because I've never been to anything like that before. And like, I don't know what to expect. And they were like, what do you mean? And I think they thought that I meant like, I didn't know what to expect for dinner. But I was like, I don't know how to expect other people to act or stand or what we're supposed to talk about or how to do things. And then somebody was like, so that's not what I was asking you. Do you not know how to have a conversation, Ashlie? And I was like, no, I do. I love to talk about all kinds of things. Do you want to talk about plants? And they were like, how much do you know about plants? And I was like, I actually know the entire everything pretty much. Yeah, I've worked at a plant store and I've planted plants and I've taught other people how to plant plants and I've grown illicit plants and I've done all kinds of things. I love plants. And they were like, so I think we should maybe later have a conversation about what's going on here. Really? And I was like, do you know, actually, now that you say that, I also know everything about all the Greek and Roman philosophers. Do you want me to talk to you about them in the timeline that they were like born? And he was like, not right now. And then later we talked and they were like, so do you think you might be a little neurodivergent? And I was like, yeah, no, I have ADHD. And they were like, okay, cool. Do you think there's anything else? And I was like, no, why are you asking? And they were like, oh, just wondering. And then I went home and I ruminated on that. And I was like, I wonder what that was about. And so I started looking stuff up and I was like, it's probably not just this thing if somebody said that to me, because I'm like not crazy enough to just think that somebody brings up a conversation for no reason. Yeah. So I went home and I was like, that was probably just supposed to be a seed, which is something nice to do to neurodivergent people, is don't tell them what you think, is just to be like, here's maybe something that might be worth thinking about if you feel like it later, because they'll feel like it later. They want to know. I wanted to know. Because
that then trips your brain to have to, does it methodically start making you research and making you?
Oh yeah. I know pretty much everything about autism.
So that's okay. So then did you self-diagnose or did you have to go through the process?
So I hear everything that's going on all the time at a very constant, not in the background either. Like I literally hear the fridge and the car and like also the bottoms of people's shoes when they're walking and the dogs like feet on the hardwood. I hear everything all at the same time. And sometimes that's very overstimulating and it makes me feel like I would like one of those large weighted blankets to sit on me forever.
Yeah.
And I realized at some point that everybody else doesn't hear those things as noticeably. They still hear them, but for them, they're actual background noise. Mm-hmm. And so I went and I got my diagnosis because I wanted to feel like I can interact with everybody else in a way, not that is more socially acceptable, but in a way that I feel comfortable. Mm-hmm. It was, and I think that was a big difference for me, was realizing that I deserve to wear clothes that are comfortable to me, and everybody else might feel comfortable in certain types of fabric, but certain types of fabric make me literally want to crawl outside of my skin, and I don't want to wear it. And
it's called misophonia, right? Misophonia.
There's a possibility that's what that's called.
Where the hypersensitivity towards sound, touch, taste.
Yeah, I just call it having autism, but things bothered me less before, which is why for a long time I used to think that I wasn't autistic. But then my therapist and I spent some time being like, did you really not feel like that? Or were you like creating masks to feel and try to experience comfort around other people? And I realized I spent a lot of time trying to be like, oh, this is okay. Everybody else feels like this. Everybody else doesn't feel like that. And it's okay that I feel like that. I just have to find coping mechanisms that help me to be comfortable in the same way that sometimes other people are naturally comfortable. And that's okay. It doesn't make me like a weirdo. It just makes me a small weirdo.
No, you're not a weirdo.
Just smidge. It's okay. It's okay to be weird. Just whoever's watching. You're totally cool. If you're weird, it's fine. It's so cool to be weird. Just don't be weird in a way that negatively impacts the people around you.
Yeah.
That's the only problem with being weird. Don't be weird in a way that negatively impacts people. Otherwise, be weird as fuck. Who cares?
It's interesting, too, is that spectrum piece. Because I think now more and more people are talking about adult spectrum. But then looking back in life, the signs as a child, did you have things such as your socks felt awful if they weren't aligned correctly? Okay. Or I personally, and I could be completely wrong, Ashlie, correct me if I'm wrong, because you have a breadth of knowledge about all of it. There is a massive spectrum, and a lot of people are within that spectrum. I have some relatability there. I've never been diagnosed, nor has anybody brought it to my attention, but sound sensitivity, things that I thought as a kid seemed awkward odd that I would be experiencing that. Or did you ever experience when you were in the classroom that if a kid was tapping their pen on the thing, or somebody was tapping their foot, and you're trying to focus on an exam or try to concentrate, I don't know if that aligns in the neurodivergent arena, but there was never a point where I did not notice that. Did you experience that? Just that hypersensitive, if everything in your environment was constantly just...
So I think I masked a lot of my experiences for a long time. One thing that...
Because you had to align to...
Yeah, because I was trying to fit in this box. But there were things that I didn't pick up that didn't fit in the box, that I didn't realize that a lot of people know the answers to questions in class, and they just didn't raise their hands.
Oh, sure.
But I raised my hand. I was like, oh, you're asking this because you want to know if I know this information. So my hand was going up. Okay. I was telling you the answer every single time so that you knew that I was proficient in, but that's not why that's not why they're asking the question. You didn't have to raise your hand every time.
Oh, gotcha.
So it was things like that for me as I've aged and looked back and been like, oh, there was a social contract existing in that space that I was not at all clued into.
Got you. Interesting.
And I think that I pay a lot more attention to people's like social interactions these days.
Yeah. But you're forced to now. Do you feel like you're forced?
But I also don't think I'm like, I tell people I'm autistic because I feel like that's something that makes me more comfortable in my interactions. In the beginning of most of my interactions, I'm like, hey, I'm autistic. I usually say something funny and then I'm like, sorry, I'm autistic. Yeah. But I do that so that I don't spend the rest of my interaction wondering, do they think I'm weird because I do things weird because I have autism? And it's totally okay that I do things weird. And I refuse, some people tell me like, oh, it's not weird. I refuse to say it's not weird because it's clearly different than the way that other people do things. And that's totally okay. There is nothing wrong with doing things different than the way that other people do them. But I think that it's like having that clue in of, what do I do to make myself feel comfortable in these scenarios so that I can be more socially aware?
Yeah.
And to also give other people the ability and the right to, and this is not something that everybody is obligated to do by any means, but for me, in my interactions, I feel like I want people to know my genuine, authentic self. And part of that genuine, authentic self is saying, this is what I experience. And sometimes our social interactions might be a little weird because I'm trying to figure them out, but also so that you know that autism is a real spectrum, right? Is that you interact with people who might have autism on a very regular basis and you might not know it at all. And that's okay. You don't have to know it at all. But I feel comfortable telling that to people because I would like more people to understand that it's a pretty normal thing. It's not like I'm a whole different person because I experienced this thing. I just think about things like way different than other people, like way different. But it's not in a mean way, and it's not in a way that is like negative or derogatory to the people or spaces around me. I think sometimes I notice that, and that's really all it is. It's a lot of noticing is what autism is. I feel like I just notice a lot of things. Yeah. I notice a lot of people see problems and they like see a solution and they're like, this is the thing. But when I see a problem and I see people looking at the solution like that, like I widen it and I'm able to be like, who all is impacted by your solution? Right. And like, what are the connotations behind what we're doing? And what is this going to set as a precedent going forward? And I think that's sort of how I like categorize my brain, my like trains of thought. Is they're just a little bit more theoretical, just more.
Yeah, see, to me, being around you feels, without you even prefacing and letting me know that you have autism. I was just curious because I was like, oh, that's interesting because I've never heard of somebody just outright hey, I just want to let you know I've got autism. And I was wondering what was behind that. And I'm appreciative of the clarification and understanding of how you're thinking and how you want to come into that situation feeling comfortable.
Yeah, I want to be comfortable.
But I've been around a lot of neurodivergent brains, and including myself, and then not understanding what neurodivergent brains were about until later in life when I was forced to understand the symptomology behind neurodivergent brains on a personal level. And then once I started to see it, I was like, damn it, I lived this entire life with a neurodivergent brain, always feeling like everybody was over here and I was over in this little othering experience, to which it leads to all sorts of perceptions of,
we call those
insecurities, perceptions of self, perceptions of how others, and then if you add the genetic component to it, temperament, you always layer it of, I'm a people pleaser. But really, in actuality, I'm just trying to figure out how to
feel in community with people.
Yeah, how to blend, how to interact, how to be with all the stimulus all around me, the environment. And then going to now looking at my kids, because there's a very genetic component to it. And seeing my son in particular having a very neurodivergent brain, and it not being, because there's not that much education, right? We're just learning about all this in the last, 10 years, maybe more so now. It's more filtered out into the community where people are like, oh, I think my kid's got autism, or I'm going to go get him diagnosed, or I'm going to go have it checked into. But then I look at it and I'm like, this has been around forever. I can think of all the people that I've been around my entire life. And I'm like, we've all had neurodivergence of some form. And we all felt very off and then lived our lives to try to blend into whatever normal is. And it's okay. You have these aha revelations, and then you're like, no, this is pretty relatively been around me. And
right. I'm unique, but not unique.
And I'm as big of a weirdo as everybody else.
Everybody's weird. We're all weird.
And I was like, I'm going to ask Ashlie today about it because I think it's fascinating and I want to get her take on it, because if she's been diagnosed, what does that mean to be diagnosed? Is it like okay, good. Did it feel like, okay, good. Now there's everything's falling into play and it makes sense. Now here's what I can do.
I think it comes in waves. Yeah. Like sometimes I'm like, okay, here's how I respond to things. Like here's how my body naturally responds. If I want to respond differently, here are the things that I have to do to preface myself to be able to respond differently, because this is what I naturally do. Other times I go into my therapist's office and I'm like, hi, do you think I have autism still, or do you think I made it up? And she's, I think it's more likely that you just made up all of these symptoms that you exhibit all of the time that you've exhibited your whole life, or that maybe you experience those symptoms and you don't feel comfortable with your diagnosis all the time, so you have imposter syndrome around.
Yeah.
And I think the key to life is having a therapist who asks you really hard questions. Yeah. Right? That's a hard question to be like, okay, but I thought I was going on a tangent. And she's, to the point, I think you have autism still. If you want to go on the tangent, that's fine. But at the end of the tangent and at the beginning of the tangent, the cup is still the cup. Same. The cup is still the cup. The cup still has autism. Right? I'm the cup.
Yeah, you're the cup.
I'm going to have autism at the end, whether I love the idea of thinking I have autism or I detest it. Yeah. So
I think autism is such a beautiful thing. The things that come out of an autistic brain is so profoundly thought-provoking. You're seeing things through such a different lens.
Sometimes I wish I knew what everybody else's lens is. Can I be honest for a second? I'm like a little jealous. Yeah, sometimes I'm like, I wonder what you guys see, because I always just see stuff like this. And then people are like, oh, that's thought-provoking. And I'm like, what did your thought provoke? Yeah. What do other people think inside their brains? Because I think everybody's brain is fascinating. I just think it's getting to the point where you feel comfortable vocalizing your fascinating thoughts. Like, I think all things come back to confidence. And I think confidence is built in two ways. I think it's built through yourself, and I think it's built through supporting other people. Yeah. When you realize, as a woman especially, I think, that it is not a crime to clap for other women.
Yep.
I think that is a life-changing experience for women. The second that women have that moment of clarity where they're like, you can succeed and I can succeed and we can succeed at the exact same time without being mutually exclusive existences, I think it gets a lot easier to clap for each other.
Yeah, 1,000%. Absolutely. Yes. We all need to get there.
And I think we all need to clap. And I think the only way to teach other people to clap is to clap.
Yes. Yes.
I think that showing up for, I personally believe in showing up for people in your industry. Like my very favorite person, I'm so excited I finally get to talk about her.
Yeah.
My very favorite person in my industry, her name is Kauffman, and we work together very closely. I actually think she texted me while I was sitting here. She has taught me so much about how everybody can win.
Yes.
I am so lucky to work in photography with her and to host things with her and get to grow in a space as a creator with her. And the only way I have the opportunity to do that is, one, because I just reached out to her one time and I was like, can I learn some stuff from you? And she was like, who the heck are you? I'd love to meet you and do the things. And that's like the point of this too, is that you have to be brave. Like, you have to be willing to put yourself out there to learn about your confidence and to gain that confidence, because not everybody's going to love everything you do. Right. I actually had a couple different photographers in my industry recently, like, critique some things I did and not love the way that I approach work, which is 100% fine. And for a minute, I was not feeling 100% fine about it. Like, I remember being like, am I not as good at this as I thought I am? But remembering again, whether Hope says it's cool or the other photographer says that it's not, it's still my picture that I took. It's still my, and it's going to be the same picture either way. And I think learning that, coupled with learning that people in your industry are always going to have knowledge that you don't have in different spectrums and areas of expertise, and not seeing that as competition, but rather seeing that as a space for potential collaboration, is going to skyrocket you so much farther than trying to dig in the dirt and just grow everything by hand.
Yes.
Call somebody who has fertilizer.
Yeah.
Like, the people who you want to garden with are going to have the fertilizer in the first place. If they don't want to garden with you, they'll just ignore you or say no, and then you're no worse off than you were before.
Exactly. Collaboration over competition. Okay, we're going to get to it. So you are a photographer. Is there anything that you're doing coming up that people should know about?
I am so excited to be going to Greece in August as a model and a photographer for an elopement styled shoot that we're hosting in Santorini and Athens and Hawaii. Wow. So I'm really excited for that.
How did you get that gig?
I was brave. And I was like, hey, can I do this thing with you? And the girl who was running it was like, yeah, I would love to have you there, which is actually my whole point in everything. If you just fucking ask people, they'll let you go every single time.
Right.
And even if they don't have space for you that time, they remember you.
Yeah.
Most people who legitimately take their businesses seriously and want to grow, they want to collaborate and grow with other people in their industries. And it's not just in a creator industry. If you work in construction and other people in construction, you're a lot more likely to get bids on other jobs than you are when you're doing it by yourself. Yeah. And I think remembering that space within each other.
So are you then working on a commercial shoot? Is that what you're doing?
It is a styled shoot. So I will be, it's to help other people grow their portfolios.
Oh, okay.
So we'll be setting up, there's $5,000 worth of florals and like designer dresses and designer wedding dresses, because it's a wedding themed shoot in Greece. So it's for people who, in theory, are trying to build their destination wedding portfolio as a photographer or videographer. Mm-hmm. And this gives them that opportunity, because it's really hard for somebody to book clients without any experience in those spaces.
Okay, got you. So you're supporting another photographer in what they're what their offerings are. Mm-hmm. Okay, so what do you get back from it?
I will probably go and shoot. I'm going to Greece.
You're going to Greece.
Right.
But do you get opportunities presented to you to be able to go do that so you can offer those services? Obviously.
Yeah. So part of it for me is I'll have this experience on this international styled shoot. So I'll see exactly how Sarah sets up her shoots and runs everything, and I'll work closely with her.
Okay.
And then any shoots that I'm not setting up, I'll just be free to shoot myself and have within my portfolio.
Yeah.
So I have a couple weddings in Greece that'll be in my portfolio.
Amazing.
And that's really cool to have.
Are you primarily a wedding photographer?
I primarily work in wedding and branding.
Okay.
So I do a lot of social media content management for different companies around the valley. And then, yeah, I do a lot of branding and wedding work. I recently got back from a wedding in Mexico, and it was so beautiful.
Yes, it's awesome. I saw your photos online.
Oh, weren't they just... Oh, thank you.
Yes, you did
They
an
were
amazing
such
job.
a beautiful couple. They were so fun. That's the coolest part about being a wedding photographer, is just really getting to know people on a very intimate level.
So you're available for destination weddings. You just don't stay in Montana. You'll go
all over.
That's amazing.
And
Cool
it's such
life.
a cool experience to be able to support people and where their dreams are being accomplished and met, right? Like that for me is such an intimate honor to be able to have people want you with them while they're achieving their dreams and goals, especially in another space. And people who come here, so many people come to Glacier to get married.
What's the title? So if somebody was listening and they're, I know I'm getting married somewhere, I'm going to be doing something fabulous in another place, how would they be able to connect with you to hire you?
You could just go to my website.
What is it?
www.mediamt.com.
Awesome. I love that. And we'll put it in the description of the episode so people can connect with you. Let's talk a little bit about the last three questions.
Yeah.
So number one is, what kind of legacy? Let me scratch that question. Let's go back. Looking at Ashlie, because I love what you talked about earlier, from age of 22, right? And now you're 27 years old, right? 27, almost 28. Looking at your life in 10 years from now, what do you wish for that version of Ashlie?
That's heavy.
It is a heavy question.
I hope that I wish and hope for her to do things that support how she feels at her core are her true values. I think it's really easy in the world as it spins faster and faster to lose what we really know to be true in our souls. And I hope that she shuts up when she's supposed to. I hope she's forgiving to people who have created a misgiving within their relationship. And above all, I just hope that she's kind. I hope that the next 10 years, I notice with age, sometimes people harden. And I hope constantly to be able to stay this compassionate towards others, because I think it can be hard in the world to remember. But I think it's also not as hard as we make it out to be. I think it's harder to be selfish than it is to cut people's slack. And I think remembering to cut people's slack is something that I really hope that she has mastered a little better than I have currently mastered it.
It's hard. I'm telling you, girl.
I have high expectations of people, and sometimes I have to be like, that's not a fair. I think that's what it is. I hope that she is able to taper expectations in a way that is aligned with the reality that she lives in.
Yes. Yes. I love that. Okay, I have a fun one. I want to throw a fun one at you. If Ashlie was given a superhero power, what would that superhero power be?
Oh, I'd read people's minds.
You would?
Before you even finish that question, I want to know exactly. Yeah, it's like an autism thing still. It's like
I also think that,
what are you guys thinking? What's happening in there? Can I see it? Do you think in pictures or words or what? Like I have a very specific, my superhero power is already tailored in my head.
Really? I see. And I feel like, I think to some degree, if we are energetically connected, I feel like we can already do that.
Yeah, but I want to know exactly.
You want to know exactly.
It's actually not exactly even the words. I'm constantly trying to figure out how people think. If they do think in words or pictures or sentences or like thoughts, because sometimes I don't really think in all of the words that I say. I like see like pieces of words in my head and I'm like, that makes sense to what I'm trying to say. So I like try to form a sentence around that thought or feeling. But I don't think everybody like their brain doesn't think like that. Sometimes I think they have a paragraph in their head already and then they read from it. But some people don't even think before they fucking talk. So it's like, what is happening up there? So I think it would be cool to see inside. Just not even see necessarily their thoughts, but just to see how they process thoughts, because there's like thoughts around, some people are visual thinkers and some people are like, just the way people process is so incredibly different and so interesting to me. Yeah. I feel like know better how to interact with different people if I knew how their brains process things. So it's actually more comes back to like, I just want to have positive interactions with the people around me.
I think you do. I think you're underestimating yourself. I think you are nothing but a joy, and you come in and you have such a vivacious light, and you guys should see her hair. It's so cool. Like it's got this like blonde side and then this Cruella de Vil. Have you seen that new movie?
Yes, actually. Mackenzie Morgan, House Beauty, Kalispell, call her. She does such good work. All the girls there.
So good. And you've got a vibe. You've got an energy. You've got a vibe. You. And when you come into a room, it's like Ashley's here. Feels good.
That's nice to hear, because sometimes it's Ashley's here.
No, it's a feel good vibe, and it's going to be a really interesting, deep conversation. So I love it. Thank you. I've enjoyed this conversation, and I'm going to give you the last question. If you had a person, this is the part where we're going to do pass the mic. So if you had a person that you would want us to interview, who would she be and why?
Okay. So this is a cheat because there's two people, and one of them I know will never be available because she's always busy running around like a chicken with her head cut off. And that would be Hope Kauffman. Her Instagram is called HK Cameraface. She is the coolest person you will ever meet in your whole life. But her schedule is so packed, I can't imagine when she will ever have time to do anything.
What makes her so cool? Everybody talks about her.
Do you know how much you like me? Like how we interact.
Yes,
Hope is kind of like me, but she like looks like a Barbie. Oh. So it's, oh my gosh, this Barbie's so intelligent and funny and nice and like cool to the people around her. And she's so good at her job and makes everybody around her feel like cared for and seen and just loved. She's just such a good human being.
That's wonderful.
That's who Hope is. Her name is Hope Kauffman, and she's an angel.
Description.
But she's always so busy. Good luck calling her.
Okay, got you.
I have to call her like 3 times sometimes before she picks up, and I would say we are very close friends.
I hear you.
But Maddie Rigg, who is, I believe, the executive director at this time of the Glacier Institute and also the title holder of Miss Montana, would probably be the coolest person that you could interview in terms of if you want to know what a real Montana girl is exactly. And Maddie's it. She is she is also one of the coolest, kindest, most down-to-earth human beings you could ever interact with.
Yes, she really is. I hate to say this, but we have interviewed her because of you.
Oh yeah, because we did this already.
We already did this already. And you literally hit the nail on the head about Madyson. She's stunning in person, but
stunning as a person.
As a person. Exactly.
Human being in her soul is truly the type of person that you as a woman would feel comfortable representing women in Montana.
And I love the fact that you'll get a little glimpse of this. You guys have very similar ways of thinking and your passion for civics and politics and making things better and leaving a lasting footprint that like paves the way for a new trail, right? She made the announcement that she's going to be potentially running for governor. My queen.
Hold on. I love her.
Why don't you guys like pair up and run for something amazing and then start an amazing organization that helps women?
Maddie's so smart. I would 100% back her for governor. I want to read her policies, but I just know that the way that she thinks about the people who live here is so homegrown and it is so down to earth. And it would be so cool to have a female governor in our space.
Yes.
Who considers that we don't have enough childcare and there are women outside of the force and that there's a wage gap. Like those are things that would be so cool to have acknowledged. And Maddie would 100% bring light to those issues.
But so would you.
Someday. Together.
So we're going to make the official announcement. Hold hands and put our hands up.
Hey, Maddie, I know you're not here right now, but do you want to be running me?
Oh my gosh, how cool would that be?
Could you imagine?
Oh my gosh, I think it'd be cool.
But on a real note, Maddie is really always looking at what's best for Montanans, and I feel comfortable saying that. I feel like I know her well enough to be able to say that the things that she looks for and is looking to change are things that are going to be of positive change for the people who live here. And
yes,
it's so cool to hear that she's thinking about making a run. I'd vote for her. You should vote for her too.
I love that. Ashlie, you are, like, I'm so sad Kate wasn't here.
Oh, me too. I really miss you, Kate.
And I'm hoping all this has gotten recorded.
Maybe we'll do it again. You just never know what the cards have in store for us.
Maybe it is, if it didn't record this time, maybe there's some real freaking, you're like meant to be back here. Maybe you're a third co-host.
Oh, wouldn't that be? I actually would co-host a podcast. I've always wanted to be on a podcast.
You would be good at it.
If you ever need a little fill-in, you call me.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Next time Kate's out of town.
No, I'm not kidding you. I will take you up on that.
No, I would love to. I actually would love to help host a podcast. I've always wanted to.
Okay, I'm
really.
not
I
kidding
have
you.
so many
I'm
weird
going
questions
to take you
I
up
want
on
to ask people. I want to ask people so many questions. Sometimes I listen to podcasts and I'm like, do you know what? I would have asked this question. And then I'm
I
like,
do it all the time.
Ashlie, that's not your podcast.
No, but still, after the fact, I do think that I'm like, okay, I should have asked this. Or what about, I like branch it off in 5 different sections. And like right now, we could be talking for hours.
Yeah,
because we
could
could
just keep going.
Yes. What you should come back and do with us is, and if Kate can't fill in, or if I can't fill in, you should come back and do like a fun little 20-minute episode with Kate or I.
Ooh, that would be so fun.
Yeah.
I'd do a 20-minute.
But
little shorts.
Thank you, Ashlie.
Thank you for having me. It's so much fun.
You are amazing.
I feel like I interrupt all the time, but thanks so much for having me. I love to be here and chat with you and talk about all the cool people and things that are going on around the space that we live in and how we can be a better part of that. And I just feel grateful to have the opportunity and be given a platform to talk about the things that we can be doing for each other so that we do feel more supported and like we're taking care of each other as neighbors. Like I feel so lucky to have grown up in this space and to represent this space. So I want everybody who gets the opportunity to be here to feel like this is their home too. And I think that only starts with treating other people like this is their home too. So I just appreciate you giving me the opportunity to tell people that and that not everybody from Montana hates them. It's just we hate you if you suck.
I love it. And we're going to end on that.
All done.
Thank you so much, Ashlie.
Thank you.
So good.
A special thank you to our podcast guest. You can find all of her links in the description of this episode. If you like what you heard, please hit subscribe. You will be notified of future podcast guests. Follow us on our social media platforms and stay tuned for our next podcast chat with an amazing Montana woman.